Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less managing their systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. Today we have a special guest. We have Rick Bertino. Rick started G.E.A.R.S Business Solutions, which is growth and efficiency around refined systems to help business owners identify and implement from the top down, clear, organized, and documented systems with processes that anyone can follow and find and execute flawlessly, and identifies resources and solutions to continue improving. All right, Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. Great to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us, Rick, what brought you here? How'd you become a systems expert, and why did you start this company called G.E.A.R.S Business Solutions?
Default. It really was by default, in the sense that I spent a lot of my career in sales, investment business primarily, working with financial consultants, and then working with one particular financial consultant who was also a money manager. Went off on his own. We both met each other at a company. He went off on his own, and he was doing charting, investment charting. So basically taking stock charts and drawing patterns, or doing what's called pattern analysis. And that pattern analysis, the objective is to, when you draw the right patterns, give you probabilities of whether things will continue to go up or down in a particular stock or market. So I spent some time with him because he needed some help organizing his operation, somebody to run it really. And so I found myself, two-man operation, working with him and organizing and managing everything in terms of the entire operation, while he's on the front end doing his charts, and getting the word out to the world about what he does. So I started to get exposure to a lot of different, for lack of a better word or a good word, systems and processes. And I wasn't consciously looking at them as systems and processes. I was consciously looking at, what do we need? How do I put it in place? And then I found myself constantly tweaking it, which is something that, if I look back on my career, I'm kind of an expert tweaker. I look at something and I'm always trying to make it better. And when you're in sales, you got to be careful of that. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to make sales, you got to bring in money. And I was aware of that, but I also had that side of me that wanted to focus on, how do I make something better, look better, work better. And so I spent about 7 or 8 years with Chris, and he and I split, and I ended up getting connected with a guy named Greg, who has a government contract management firm. And he said, Rick, look, you've got 35 years of experience in industry, and why don't you come in and take a look at our processes and see what you can improve, which was completely different from anything I've ever done in terms of a formal, intentional focus on systems and processes. But I said, okay, because I was at a point in life where I was looking to do something different and kind of almost test and see what skills that I had and what I could do with them. So came on board with Greg, started evaluating systems and processes. Initially looked at eMyth. You and I talked about eMyth, and I know, of course, you're very familiar with what they do. But it wasn't kind of the succinct fit to what Greg was looking for. And I ended up finding, you and Work the System, and talked to Greg about implementing that. Interestingly enough, he's hiring me to do that, and I'm looking for a resource to help me help him. But it made sense because I needed a formal structure, which is what I lacked, to help implement systems. And so with Work the System, I was able to give myself and Greg a structure to go by. And that simple four-legged stool, but very important four-legged stool, have a vision, a strategic objective, where you want to go with the company, what's your character, who you are. Then, second leg, operating principles. What's the behavior that we're going to be driven by and guided by? And then the specific processes or working procedures. And then the fourth leg being the procedures for procedures. How do you write a working procedure? So I brought that to Greg, and he complimented, in fact, the other day, said, we're at a great place right now, and we could have never gotten there without these systems in place. And I think what even is more important to Greg is the fact that as they grow, they're positioned to handle growth. A lot of companies focus on growing and they say, well, we'll do this when we get there. We'll do this when we have more money. We'll get organized, or take on this particular project when X. And I don't believe in that. And because I think what you have to focus on is preparing for success, just as much as you might even prepare for avoiding certain types of pitfalls. But you've got to put yourself in a position that if you have growth, you can handle it. And if you can't handle that growth, you're not in a position, well, what's going to potentially happen? And that client, if there's issues and you're not able to support what the client needs or what you said you could deliver to that client, obviously that's not going to work to your advantage. Internally, if you don't have enough staff, if you don't have the systems in place to handle certain types of business, that creates chaos internally. And obviously, as a result, people leave. And what happens when people leave? Now you got to replace them with somebody. You got to train them again. So good systems versus not having systems in place could truly impact a company in a negative way. But getting back to your question, that's how I got into almost kind of backdoor or indirectly into this business. And as a result, I really enjoyed it. And Greg has been instrumental in helping me also build my business out with other clients. That's a great, the short answer.
Well, it's a good answer. You switch careers or career paths based on client need. And, we've talked a lot. Just for full disclosure, Rick is one of the certified business systems professionals. So he's a true expert, a true pro at putting systems into place. So you had this experience with Greg. What has it been after that? Because now you seem to get other clients. What have you refined your process and how you work with clients? Do you have a process for how you work with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I've taken the framework from Work the System, then what I applied with Greg and his government contract management firm, and really have applied that to other companies because it is a framework. Why reinvent it? Sam and you have put a lot of time and effort into building it, and it works. So why reinvent the wheel? But what's really interesting is what I'm able to do is it really does not matter what type of company you are. I can take the framework from Work the System and what I've done with Greg and apply it anywhere. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that I don't have to be an expert or really that knowledgeable in a company or about a company in order to help them. Because what I'm really doing is I'm helping you help yourself. I'm helping you understand and give you a picture of where you're at versus where you can be when it comes to organizing your company, organizing information. It's really what it comes down to is all about organizing information. Half of what I get paid for, if not more, is helping companies organize information. Hey, Rick, I've got this information here. I'm not sure where to put it so that everyone can find it. Therefore, as a result, I'm working with a construction contractor. I'm working with an electrical contractor. I'm helping a guy with his jiu-jitsu and fitness facility and gym and company that he has. So it could be a broad array. Now, for me, selfishly, I'd probably be better off focusing on just a couple of areas and building that out because it'd be easier for me if I just work with government contract management firms. But I like the variety and I like the challenge. So that's the answer to that question. We could talk about some specifics of some things that I've done for a recent company, but you tell me when.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting. So you have a framework. Right now you're working with a variety of companies. But yeah, why don't you give us a specific example of what it's like, because people can theoretically think, okay, so organizing information. What does that actually tangibly look like? Yeah.
All right, so let's take an electrical contractor, which again could be any type of company, but one of the challenges they have among many is how do we do reviews for our employees? We have these reviews, they're coming up and they're doing ad hoc reviews, which means each employee, each team member is getting interviewed a little differently. They're getting interviewed differently for a couple of reasons. One, who's doing the interview? If the foreman's doing the interview versus the owner, and if there's 5 foremen, each foreman kind of does it their own way. And just out of just normal human relationships, if this foreman likes this guy more than another guy, is that impacting their raise. And maybe the other guy is more qualified, but he doesn't have the best attitude. Whereas a guy who has a really great attitude, but he's not really skilled or not doing the best work that he could do. He's not, his skill set isn't refined as much as the other guy, but he's getting paid more. He gets a better raise. It shouldn't be that way. Life isn't purely black and white in the sense of making decisions of raises or in the process of doing reviews, but you should have structure behind it. So they said, well, Rick, can you help us develop this? And I thought it was just different out of this, what I would thought would be the normal scope of some things that I would do, but it's really not. It really is a creative art in part of what we do, not just organizing things. So I realized, they really judge their employees based on kind of four things: field experience, behavior, attendance, which is a big thing in that world, and schooling. I mean, you have field experience, but you need schooling in the electrical trade. I mean, something like 8,000 hours, and it takes a few years. So we ended up put together a document that had all four of those areas. And then eventually it made its way over to a Google sheet. And it could have been a form, but it's actually a Google sheet. Worked out a lot better because you can build it like a form. And I worked with some programmers on a very limited basis because I know some basic formulas with sheets, but I needed just a little help with the programming side in one of those formulas. And we got it down to the four parts where you check boxes. It gives you a total score. And based on that score, there's a formula that tells you whether they got a 1, 2, or 3. So the boxes they're checking are, without getting into too much detail, are they unskilled at the job? Are they skilled at the job? Actually, what was it? Doesn't know, still learning, and knows, something like that. And they get a 1, 2, or 3. And you add up those columns. And at the end of the day, the goal is to determine overall, are they a 1, 2, or 3 in that area? And then the second area, third area, fourth area, and then you get a total score. And the total score, let's say, adds up to 12. And that 12, depending on whether they got a 0, which they are not going to really get, or a 12, that impacts what kind of raise he can get. That's the quantitative side that we built. Then we built a qualitative side, which was a series of questions that the foreman will answer, that the employee also answers. And they have a discussion about that. But those qualitative answers certainly impact their ability to get a raise and what kind of raise they get and whether they advance to the next level. So by putting those things in place, it was so helpful to them because they were so ad hoc. And you talk about, chicken with your head cut off. There were 3, 4 people involved in these reviews, and when are they going to happen and how do we do them? So I was not the when part, but the how do we do these effectively? How do we keep it simple? How do we get it down, basically funnel it down to an answer? And that's what I helped them to do. And that made a really significant difference for them. And now I've got to help them build like 24 of these. We've got 4 for apprentices. We've got 4 for electricians, for the foreman, and there's commercial versus residential. So I got the templates, and now it's very easily to build out the others. And so now they can have interviews and get them done quickly and effectively. So that's been a really a good game changer. And that's just one thing that I'm doing for them to try to make a difference.
So in a company, how do you decide where to go first? Because I'm assuming that kind of business, there's 100 different directions you could go first. Like, why did you decide to work on that part of the business?
I think a lot of it goes back to just the fundamentals of selling and even more than that. It's just the fundamentals of human relationships. It just starts with asking. The guy I used to work with, I remember him telling me his brother used to yell at him. I think his whole family yelled at him because all he did was ask questions. And there's a balance between asking questions and providing feedback. But because at some point the client says, okay, you're asking all these questions, like, what's your recommendation? But it really comes down to asking effective questions. And once you ask enough questions, you ultimately figure out what the greatest concern is, and literally ask that question. What's the greatest concern that you have? But there's an art to that. Most people, and I'm not saying that they do it intentionally, but most people don't really tell you what's really wrong the first time you ask. And sometimes that's the way the question was asked. Sometimes it's what's on their mind at the time. But if you keep drilling and asking questions coming from different angles, and you really try hard to understand where they're coming from, you get to the core of what's really bothering them. And then at that point you say, how much does that bother you? And is that bother you enough to do something about it today? So it's one thing to say it's a problem. It's another whole other thing to know whether or not they really care about it enough to do something about it. And it's a whole other thing to know whether they care about whether to do something about it now, and if they're really committed to it. And once they say yes, then I say, all right, fine. This is what I can do to help you. And after that, it's a question of, if they like what they heard, well, when do we start, and what do you charge? So that's kind of how I approach it.
So for those people listening, because we have a lot of small business owners who watch this, who are interested in getting their company organized, who is an ideal client that's ripe for this, that actually could get a lot of value out of working with you or someone like you who wants to get their business more efficient? And is there a type of person who they're not ready yet, that they shouldn't think about this kind of help?
It's almost too easy, Josh. In a way, any person listening who says to themselves, do I feel completely organized in my company or not? Do I feel like my company's really efficient, if not super efficient? Because my job isn't just to make a company efficient, it's to make them super efficient. Mm-hmm. Everybody has processes in place, whether they know it or not. So I'm not bringing processes and procedures or even systems to a company. I'm just taking the ones you have and making them a whole lot better, make sure they make sense and that they work with each other effectively and efficiently. So if you ask yourself the question, am I really organized and efficient? If you're not, then the next question to ask is I'm in a position where I really should do something about it now. And you have to take your eyes off yourself, in the sense that, how is what I'm doing now impacting my employees and the relationships that my employees have with me, relationship my employees have with each other, relationships my employees have with the customer. If their world's chaotic, they're maybe not in the best position to give their very best to you, give their very best to your clients. And obviously, that's going to impact the bottom line. Certainly, if you're thinking of selling the company, no question about it, you better make sure you are absolutely 100% efficient as much as you can, because it will impact the check you get. So yeah, in that sense, if you're going to sell, I would say a couple of years down the road, you're thinking about it, you should start now, because it's going to take you a good year to 2 years to really get things efficient. Now, that doesn't mean I can't be effective for somebody in 3 to 6 months, but I mean, in terms of depending upon where you're at, depending upon how challenging things are, how chaotic they are, what you have in place currently, that'll really determine what's needed and how much you need to do. Also, what kind of people do you have on staff? What's their capability? How much of it do I need to do? In some cases, I'm writing procedures for people. In other cases, I'm guiding them on how to write. So that's more into the weeds to your question, Josh. But I mean, those questions they're the basic questions you should be asking yourself.
Yeah. And ultimately, any company that wants to, I hate this phraseology, go to that next level. I mean, any company who actually does want to move beyond their status quo has to invest in their infrastructure. And that this is one of those things, which is organizing their systems. If they're not willing to do that, and most owners are not very good at doing it, yep, nor should they do it, they're going to stay stuck.
Yeah. And I guess one other thing, Josh, I mean, ask yourself as a business owner, am I working in my business or am I working on it? Mm-hmm. How do I feel about that? And if you want to change that ratio, then you got to put in systems, because systems are the sole answer, or improve your systems and processes. That it is the sole answer and solution to that problem. You want to work more on your business, which business owners should. If you want to grow it, you want to scale it, you want to work less in it, you want to enjoy more time with family, or you just want to work more. There's nothing wrong. It's not about working less. It's about working on the things that you want to be working on as a business owner. Because a lot of times, people sell the concept of, do the following in order to, get more freedom in your life and work less and spend more time on the beach. God made us to work. The question is, are you doing what he made you to do? Are you focusing your time and energy on the things that allow you to be productive and you get enjoyment out of life? So it's not about working less unless that's a choice. It's something you want to do. But a lot of business owners are putting out a lot of fires when they could be and should be being more effective on the things that they're talented at and get away from the things that they're not. Putting effective and efficient systems in place will resolve that.
Well said. Well, Rick, just because of time, I want to get to these last couple of questions
Sure.
so people can find out where you are. So the one I like to leave everyone with, and this might be a surprise question to you, is what's a question that I didn't ask you, but I should have asked you during this interview?
I don't know. Well, we talked about getting in this line of work, and I guess let me think about it. Maybe a good question is why don't business owners do the obvious?
Okay. Good question.
And the obvious is from day one, you should be working on your business and getting it efficient, because it's the reason why companies are chaotic. But there is a good reason for it, and it's in some respects it's taking pressure off the business owner. On the other hand, it's also a kind of a come to Jesus. It's time to do things differently. Mm-hmm. When you start off in your company, it's just you. So you are the jack of all trades. You are doing everything. And so how do you take the time to grow your business and at the same time over here work and do a procedure for each thing that you do? No one ever probably told you to do that in the first place. And it's a very rare person that maybe came across business systems, unless maybe it's some of their schooling. Like in Greg's case, it was his schooling. So he got a really good head start in his company because that was his background in schooling. Part of in the military, he was also doing systems analysis and systems engineer, I think is one of the things that he was schooled in. So, but a lot of companies and a lot of business owners, by default, they're just busy and they end up chaotic because of how they started off doing everything, wearing all the hats. Wherever you are at this stage, it really is a question of, are you willing to stop? Are you willing to take time to stop and take stock of where you're at and get the help that you need to get organized? And I think if you're willing to do that, then you can make a really positive difference in your company, in your life, and in your employees' lives.
Yeah, well said. All right. Well, Rick, where can people find you if they want help with their business? Where are you online?
But you can find my profile on LinkedIn. Just if you put Rick Bertino in LinkedIn, you'll see my information there, and you'll see G.E.A.R.S Business Solutions. If somebody wants to email me directly, it's gearsbizsolutions@gmail.com. GEARS Solutions@gmail.com, and that's probably the best way to get a hold of me directly.
Yeah, and I love that about you, Rick, is that you prove the point that you don't need to have a massive funnel, social media following, all this stuff built out as a consultant to be really good at it, which you are, and to get a lot of clients, which you have. You just need to be out there talking to people and helping them with where they're at. And that's really it. And that's kind of the way we started to work the system as well. And so people who think you need to have a massive marketing plan to get good clients, it's just not true. Also, Rick can be found on our website, Work the System. He's one of the certified business systems professionals. And so you can read his bio there as well, or LinkedIn. And if you're listening to this right now and looking for help, certainly he has my endorsement. All right, Rick. Well, thank you for making the time this Friday afternoon. And I want to say thanks to everybody who's watching this or listening or here with us live on Facebook. Catch us next week. We try to do a recording every Friday, and you can watch us live. Otherwise, if you want a copy of that book right there behind me, Work the System, we mail out a hard copy once a week to anyone who leaves us a review. We pull one name out of a hat. And so if you want to do that, you can leave us a review anywhere and then take a screenshot of that review and email it to info@workthesystem.com. And then again, we'll mail out one book a week. Also, if you want a digital download, again, workthesystem.com. And we will see you all next week.